All right, we're live. Welcome. Thank you, guys. These are always awkward to get started. It always takes a few minutes for everyone to jump in and join. And there's a 30-second delay between me speaking and you seeing it and commenting. So I'm going to hang out for a minute and give anyone a chance to join and jump in. So when you do get on, if you need headphones, grab coffee, now is your moment. And in the interest of time, since I promised this would be 15 minutes, I'll get started whether it's me or not, and you guys can catch this in the replay. This is the moment where you need awkward holding music for people to jump on and get going. So going 20 more seconds and we are in and rolling. All right, 10 seconds was about all I can handle of that. Well, thanks for being here. I'm excited that you're choosing to dedicate the next 15 minutes to yourself and your development. This is the first one of a series called Freebie Friday, where we dedicate 15 minutes on the last working day of the month to end it strong. So when you come back on Monday, you have a new month, a new focus, and a new way to help yourself grow and develop. I'm Jen Scopo, the owner of Tap Into Talent Consulting. I'm a talent technician, Starbucks addict, and major pizza lover. I could sit here and ramble a whole bunch of stuff about myself that you probably don't care about. But I promised you 15 minutes, and I promised you 15 minutes of impact. So if you're interested in my background, why you should listen to me, why you should care about anything I'm saying, there's a whole bunch of bio stuff and whatever on this page that you're welcome to check out. So let's jump in. Today's topic is define your leadership style. A lot of this will directly pertain to those of you in titled leadership positions that have direct reports, run meetings and such. One of the most important things I've learned through the years, however, is that the titled people aren't always the actual leaders that garner support and excitement for new initiatives. So even if you're not a titled leader, hang out. I'm sure you'll find at least one or two things that may help you improve what you do and make more of an impact. Let's start by thinking back to grade school. When you first learned the scientific method, step number one is to identify the problem. You have no ability to create a hypothesis, test it, come to a firm conclusion, and construct a theory if you don't know what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Now, that's not to say that your leadership is a problem, but you have no ability to hone it, perfect it, develop it as best you can, and yes, overcome problems that likely exist within it if you don't first have a firm definition of what your style is to help you start identifying, is this what I want to be as a leader? What do I want to be as a leader? And how can I bridge that gap to get from where I am to where I want to be? Now, this is an entire workshop that can be at least an hour, if not 3 to 4 hours. So this is just going to be a quick little snippet. Let's say you jumped over and did a quick little Google search. You can find a million different ways to identify and define leadership styles. At the end of the day, the terminology that's put to it is really irrelevant. So in your mind right now, start asking yourself some questions. First, consider when you're in front of a room, whether you're leading a meeting, conducting a job interview, speaking with a new client, whatever the case may be, consider what your mindset is at that moment. What position are you coming from? Are you thinking about how can I build a relationship and become friends with this person? How can I assert my dominance and prove that I'm the one in charge right now? How do I earn my credibility and make sure these people respect me? How do I show them I really care about them as people and individuals? Or how can I use this moment right now to drive the bottom line? Chances are you just realized you asked yourself a couple of those questions, consciously or not, at some point. But which one resonated the most? There's definitely one of those, even if it's slight, that you know is more true to form for you than anything else. So take a second and think about why that's true for you. What's important to you about leading the meeting or conversation coming from that perspective? Now, regardless of what answer you came up with and which style you feel connected with most in that moment, it's your objective to really dive into that and really figure out why that's your goal and how you can take that part that comes the most natural to you and work it to the best of your ability. Regardless of which one of those you think you connect with, There are amazingly strong positives, and there are some ways that can work against you and actually become a weakness. So we're going to focus on the part that makes it a positive. Think about all of the ways that the style you connect with plays out as a strength. Of those positives, of those strengths, which one can you use to really be the strongest leader possible? So for example, let's say you're in front of the room thinking about, how do I build my credibility and respect? And that's the style that you most connect with. If you've clicked through my page at all, you can see this is a huge focus of mine. I am a firm believer that as a leader, you should always focus on earning respect, not making friends, and everything else will fall into place. So if that's the style you fall into, you can leverage that to the best of your ability and put that to work by figuring out what environment suits the culture that you're in that moment. Is this a culture that thrives on being collaborative? Have they been trained to take direction and just march with their orders? Or is there some blend? And then even more importantly than how the culture is now and has always been, consider how should the culture be to be the most effective while knowing what your goals and objectives are. Now, you're going to take that and you're going to figure out how your leadership style, whether it's the one I chose or not, and how you can do that. How can you address the culture and ask, how do I use my leadership style to maximize this and maximize the results of this meeting? Now you may be thinking, okay, cool, I see that this would have some impact. Why do I really care about this though? Can I just read the room and change how I communicate? Sure, you should always be reading the room. But the way that you're reading the room is the way that you're personally interpreting it. And the way you're communicating and changing your communication is still indicative of your leadership style. So in order to actually make this work for you and not just be some fluffy concept that rolls around in your mind every once in a while, take some time, sit down, and write some of the characteristics that you know are true to you. So feet to the fire. You're leading a meeting, you're having a conversation with someone you lead, it's a conflictual, stressful situation. What's your default style? Whatever that default is, are you using your powers for good? Or are you using your powers for evil? That doesn't mean evil in the traditional sense. That means, has it become a weakness for you in that moment? And are you actually turning the situation into more of a negative because of your default leadership style? When you can identify that, you can really drill down and decide, okay, here are my defaults. Here's how my emotion levels are read by others. Here's my perspective. Here's how I communicate in those moments. Here's all of my body language. Go back through that list and tick off the ones that are the good ones, the strengths. That's where you start. Focus on the strengths because, as Marcus Buckingham will tell you, if you take a strength and you polish it, you can see that grow exponentially to the 9th degree beyond your imagination. And once you figure out the best way to truly leverage those strengths and make them work to the best of your ability, you should naturally start at least improving on the parts that don't come naturally to you, right? Those are your weaknesses. Now, you can never turn a weakness into a strength. It is simply not natural to you. But you can improve it, at least incrementally, and have it be an awareness. So here's where we are. You know the style that's a default to you. You know what your strengths are, or you will after you go back and do this exercise. And again, you're going to figure out how to polish those, and you're going to get a grasp on your weaknesses too. All of that knowledge and awareness comes into play in your ability to articulate this and understand it. Yes, it's for your benefit, first and foremost, to be able to polish them and enhance them. But it's also so you can lead your team and grow them as much as possible. One of the strategies I've always found to be most effective in a position of leadership is to openly communicate your style with every person you lead, particularly your direct reports. It's always where they start. So make sure they know, hey, here's what kind of leader I am. Here's how I typically approach situations, and here's my intended outcome in every situation I approach. I am not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. And even when I'm trying my best, here are the parts of my leadership style that I know are a detriment to me. Here are the things I'm personally trying to improve. I want you to be aware of that because I don't think I'm the greatest at everything. Then you take it one step further. and by also sharing, it would be really helpful for me if you could keep a pulse on that and let me know. Like, hey, Jen, remember how you said when you're communicating, you don't share the details in your communication? Here's a moment where you're doing that. You're, meaning the employee, important in this because we're going to be the most effective and collaborative team possible when we're actually collaborating. The power of that conversation with your employees is immeasurable. It's important for all of you out there to remember that being a leader doesn't just mean being in charge. It doesn't mean trying to prove, hey, I'm the best in everything all the time. I don't make mistakes. I'm a perfect person. That actually limits your ability to be an effective leader. Now, that may sound like an obvious perspective and state of mind, but it's all too often not actually apparent in action in the people in leadership. So you knowing this and maybe even agreeing with it does absolutely nothing for your ability to actually execute this when it comes down to it. So to be that effective leader, be prepared to be open, humble, be that horrible word people see as so negative, be vulnerable with your team. That's how you're going to get the most out of your people. Because by you demonstrating in your words, and more importantly, the actions that follow, that failing is acceptable, if you're open to how to fix it the next time, you're going to create an environment in which they're comfortable failing. Now, that does not mean destroying your business. I hope not. That's a conversation for a different time if that's the case. But it does mean that you're giving them the permission and you're empowering them. You're encouraging them to try new things, step outside of their comfort zone, put new plans into place, and find a better way of doing things. And the worst thing that happens is maybe it doesn't work perfectly in the beginning. But they have the confidence, enthusiasm, and support to try again. They have a new path that they can keep working on and improving eventually. They're going to find a much more productive, successful, innovative way of doing whatever it is they do. And you can guarantee that the confidence and motivation that comes from that outcome will pay off in the future productivity and retention of employees in ways you cannot calculate. And that's because of the environment that you create from your leadership style that allows them to fail. And that starts with you and knowing who you are as a leader and keeping that pulse on it. So here's the first part of everything I've rambled at you so far. It's really important to remember and understand for your actual implementation of this beyond just that first conversation. So your key points right now, and for those of you who jumped in a few minutes late, is to make sure you have an in-depth understanding of what your default position and style is as a leader, how that works for you as a positive, how it works against you as a negative, and what to do with all of that. So asking yourself, how do I polish these strengths? How do I work around these weaknesses? And how do I keep myself aware of them? Then use that to communicate directly to your team. Here's who I am as a leader. Here's why that's good, how it gets in my way. I'm in this with you. I'm not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. I expect your best effort in direct communication. We're in this together. Then we come into part 2. You told them how you lead. You can only be as effective of a leader as your followers are willing to follow you. So having a title that demands compliance is not leadership. Understanding that and living by that means you need to know what's important to them, what resonates with them, what kind of leader motivates them the most, and what kind of leader demotivates them. And the only way to do that is in the same conversation in which you identify, here's my leadership style, blah, blah, everything I've said twice. This is a new part of the conversation. You turn it around and ask them, what kind of leader is most effective for you? Now, in most cases, that's a really big, fluffy question. You're not going to get a lot of information, but it starts the discussion. And your follow-up questions are where you're going to get the important stuff. Saying, okay, great, that's a really helpful starting point. I have a follow-up question to make sure I don't miss anything that's important to you. Think about a manager or a coach or a teacher. Whatever one is appropriate based on the age of the person you're talking to. Who was most effective for you? Got the most energy from you? You were the most successful under them, and why? What was it about how they led you, communicated with you, motivated you? What were the things that were most effective? Now flip it over and think of the opposite. Think about a person you hated working for or playing for, someone who was demotivating, frustrated you, you didn't feel valued. Why? What did they do? You're at a point where you're getting amazing insights to set this person up for success. There's only one way to keep talking. to keep them talking rather. Validate what they're saying. Confirm that what they're saying is okay. You need them to be direct and blunt. Recap what you heard that they said really works and really demotivates them. And you're going to put your money where your mouth is and say, here's my commitment. I'm going to do my best as often as possible to remember everything you've shared and always work on my leadership style. But I can't do that without your input. So we're going to work together and see what truly works best in this environment. And again, the accountability comes back to you as the leader to truly make the decision to monitor and grow your leadership style and respect what was shared, because you asked the question. Now you need to deliver. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do this and keep the doors of communication open. We don't have time to get into all of those right now. And they're going to be really specific to your personality, your culture, your company. But it works, and it is worth the effort. The most productive, successful, cohesive teams are the ones that have a leader they truly respect and want to follow, not the one that has a title that they have to follow them. It's so true what they say. People don't leave a job, they leave a manager. Yes, I know these work, and I know firsthand. I didn't talk about these in the beginning because I didn't talk about myself rather in the beginning because it's really not that important. But now that I've directed you to approach this in perhaps a way you never have, it's important for you to at least know this. I've been in some sort of leadership position for the better part of the last 18 years. Yes, those of you who know my approximate age, that means I was first put in charge of managing other people when I was an intern at Smith Barney when I was about 18. Now you all know my age. I've had some really easy team members during that time and some really difficult ones that gave me a run for my money. I am sure you can imagine which ones forced me to really polish my approach and style. Here's the reality. I have failed on more occasions than I can count, and sometimes in really big ways. But I've learned valuable lessons along the way that led me to creating incredibly productive, successful, synergistic teams that felt empowered. They were open to growth, open to feedback, and consistently hit new heights as a result. This works. Again, I'm Jen Scopo, owner and talent technician with Tap Into Talent Consulting. Thank you for dedicating 15 minutes to your growth on this last Friday of the month. If this video spurred any ideas you want to bounce around or follow-up questions personal to you, send a message and we can chat. It won't be a sales conversation to become my client, but rather a vision session to help you create a path that motivates you, whether I'm part of that solution or not. If you do have ideas of how we can formally collaborate on an ongoing basis, I'm an organizational consultant, keynote speaker, trainer, and coach. Check out the services tab on this Facebook page for more detail, and you can message me about any of that too. Have a great rest of your Friday. More importantly, have a rock star of a Monday and start October strong. I hope to see all of you next month at my next month's, what do I call these things? Freebie Friday. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Same time, same place. Have a good one, guys.